Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsor this week is Notion. More about that later. And joining me is Wes Hilliard, who has seen the light, has seen the risks, and has decided not to keep installing beta on all of his hardware. Am I right, Wes?
Well, I'm actually even more baited than I was last time because I finally remembered that I have a Mac, and it is now Beta 2 is installed on my MacBook Pro.
You finally remembered you have a Mac. Okay. Put it aside, William. Put it aside. Okay, so you've gone beta. Have you had any extra? I had some oddities going to beta 2 on the few machines I have. Has it been all right for you?
I think I've seen the same bugs just repeated. Nothing too crazy. A couple of boot loops, again, because Stage Manager likes to get grumpy. The biggest annoyance I've noticed so far is on iPadOS Stage Manager. A stage with Safari and Drafts is visible on the iPad and the desktop. So if I have Safari and Drafts open on the desktop and then I go to the iPad and swipe between my open stages, so I'm going between, Mastodon and Slack and stuff like that, it'll grab the open Safari and Drafts as if it's part of the iPad view and pull it out of the monitor back to the iPad. And then I have to, reopen it in the monitor. And that is such a weird bug. But otherwise, nothing too crazy.
Well, okay, I'm going to try to match you for weird bugs. Previously, actually, this was on AppleInsider Plus. So I should say AppleInsider Plus is this extended ad-free version of the podcast for people who subscribe either through Patreon or through Apple Podcasts. And we were talking last week about all things to do with betas, and during it, I had a bug for the first time. Today's AppleInsider Plus is going to be about, would Steve Jobs put up with Apple Intelligence? We don't know. It was something like that. But the bug that appeared is one I mentioned to you and in AppleInsider Plus that I actually run a shortcut on my iPad to kind of make notes during a podcast. So it's this is a good spot for new artwork, new chapter artwork, things like that. And it totally failed. It came up with a cannot be run because this task isn't recognized. And it wouldn't. The frustrating thing is it doesn't tell you what that task is. You have to remember it. The solution, as actually you said last week, was go to it on another machine. I went to it on my Mac. I found the problematic thing. And very frustratingly, it was a shortcut action to do with Drafts, the text editor. And Drafts is on that iPad, even though Shortcuts was saying it wasn't. And the solution to this erroneous can't be found action was to look up exactly the same action in the same list, drag it over, duplicate the settings, and then delete the wrong one, and everything worked totally fine. So bugs are random.
I have a favorite bug.
Okay. Yeah.
So dark mode icons, excellent. But it appears, I hope it's not a bug, I hope it's a feature, that the red notification bubble might get dyed black. In the, and I don't know why. It never even occurred to me before, but this is excellent. Like, it's just not as loud, but it's there, and I'm okay with this. Like, and I can imagine someone with 42,000 unread emails having a black bubble instead of a bright red angry one, and I think it just makes the world a better place, not having such angry red bubbles everywhere.
Right, you could just read the emails, though, couldn't you? Or
hey, I have zero notification bubbles. When there is a notification number next to something, it's because I need to open it. That's it. Yeah, I have that very well managed.
I have one unread message in my email inbox, and it came in just a moment ago, totally ruining the fact that I was about to say to you I have inbox 0. If anybody does have 40-odd thousand things, the trick is to go in, select all, mark as read, because you're never going to read them anyway. Just get them out the way.
Or delete.
Or
just delete.
You're harsh.
Go sign up for a new email account and delete the old one and start over.
When Russell T Davies started Doctor Who in 2005, he was automatically given a BBC email address, and he didn't know. And years later, he had to do something, and he was told about this, and he's sitting there looking at this account, years worth of messages about Doctor Who, and he looked at the BBC IT people and just said, delete it, and they all went away. So, there's precedent for this.
Email bankruptcy, it's a thing. And if you're not going to read them, just get rid of them. Honestly, get rid of that. That's my advice. Like if you find yourself in that situation, unless it's a like critical account that you need to sign into something, just get rid of the account. Migrate over to a brand new one that the telemarketers don't have, and try again. Don't give your email to so many scammy websites.
Yeah, I worry about this because at the moment I seem to have lots of email newsletters that I'm reasonably sure I didn't actually subscribe to. And I know if I hit their unsubscribe button, what I'm really doing is telling them I'm real. So that worries me. But all right, actually, you said favourite bug. I have a favourite bug in the iOS 18 beta, and I'm kind of glad that it has persisted into beta 2. It's this. Every once in a while, and who knows why, do not disturb focus mode will turn itself on. Now, so far, I've missed 3 phone calls that way. No, 4. 4 phone calls I've missed because it just decided to be in Do Not Disturb. And I admit one of them was important, but the other 3 really weren't. So I was actually very glad about it. So it's mostly a favourite bug. Okay. Right. You're anti-email. I'm obviously anti-phone calls and things like that. One thing that's new since Beta 2 came out that I actually like a lot, and I'm surprised to say I'm using quite a bit, is iPhone mirroring. Are you, Rich, deeply into this?
I haven't even turned on the Mac since I updated it. This is actually my first time going in blind to see if it even turns on. And success, we're recording a podcast, so I suppose it's fine. Yeah.
You know, every time you do this to me, I put my head in my hands. You have a iPhone mirroring, I think we all know that it is this thing that your iPhone appears on your Mac screen. It's so straightforward, it's practically boring. I mean, the very first time I did it, there were some weird oddities on the Mac. The Mac was telling me that the Mac was locked, but it wasn't. So, but a restart fixed that. And every now and again, you've got the phone in the pocket and the Mac will say, well, you've got to unlock it, haven't you? So you have to get it out. And if you've got it out, what's the point? But most of the time, actually, it's shockingly useful. I'm hard to explain why. I have one banking app that's always a pain on the Mac. It just goes through. It never remembers me. I have to go through endless security things. But the iPhone version of it just goes, straight through. So I tend to use the iPhone one a bit. And there it was on my Mac, right next to my accounts spreadsheets. It's
funny that there's so many of these features that are, if they almost feel boring because they're just so straightforward. Like I'm writing the iOS 18 review, and I got to my section on notes and reminders stuff, and I just described what it was, and I'm like, what is there to say? Like they're actually really good updates. They elevate this platform. They make people want to stay with these instead of going to third parties. Like this is going to be a really good update, but the update is literally you can do math and notes now. That's it. Or you can do a voice recording and extract your transcripts and paste them into the notes field. Like those are great, but you can literally say it in one breath. There's not much to it, but it's technologically impressive as far as things go. The reminders calendar integration, less impressive, but I'm glad it's there.
Oh, I'm intrigued about that. Hold on, part of that for thought, because I'm about to confess something. I'm actually writing the Mac OS review. So obviously there's overlap here. That's obviously why I've been trying iPhone mirroring. In fact, it's the sole reason I went to the beta on my iPhone. But is it awful to admit that I'm quite glad to have found some issues with iPhone mirroring, just so I can't. It's just so that the review isn't, what Apple said, kind of.
Yeah, here's some mirroring. That's it. Yeah. Well, you can't rearrange your icons, correct? So, like, that was one thing people were like, I can finally edit the home screen with a mouse like I could in iTunes 20 years ago. And
I remember that in iTunes. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, and you can't do that with screen mirroring. It allows you to control your phone. Yes, you can access certain parts of apps, but there are functions that are turned off in screen mirroring.
Some of them do surprise me, that you can't get Control Center, at least not in the current version. And this one really surprised me, because Apple was selling this as interoperability between devices, how easy it is to move things around. Copy and paste doesn't work, either into or out of iPhone mirroring. And this is the oddest one of all. This has got to be a bug. It's got to be a bug. But, you can select text by double or triple clicking on a paragraph on your iPhone through iPhone mirroring, but you can't drag to select anything. You can move the keyboard as well, but that's it. It's like, did they just
I
not
feel
get
like
around to that?
It's because you're simulating touch. There's too many conflicting
Right.
things happening. Are you dragging? Are you clicking? Are you tapping? Like what? It's a sensor overload, I think, and you're not meant to use this to literally do everything on your phone. I think it's meant to be a kind of. And I know they showed people opening like the Duolingo app, I guess, but it's meant to be a quick jump in, jump out situation. I don't think you're meant to just have your phone open all the time. Though I believe there are some people who want to use it that way.
Actually, you might be proud of me. I played a game of Sudoku through iPhone mirroring. I played a game, and actually, it was really satisfying. I mean, actually, oh yes, apparently game mode on, and I'm sure that made a massive difference to my times, because obviously I track my times in Sudoku. I have a spreadsheet on that. I'm getting faster, but I tell you, favourite things. We talked about favourite bugs, and this is a new thing in beta 2. But I mentioned Apple Insider Plus. We record this as it happens on a Thursday afternoon. The moment we finished recording the extra Apple Insider Plus thing, and we said goodbye very nicely, it went up. There was the headline on Apple Insider that Final Cut Camera was out, and I ran to the App Store, and it wasn't there because how things take a time to roll out. It wasn't available in the UK store, and I'm hitting refresh. I'm searching and searching again, and in the end, actually, Mike Worthy on Apple Insider just sent me a link to the American one, and the App Store routed it through, got it, and I had it installed within the hour, and it's gorgeous. I mean, you're an iPad guy. Do you do much filming on your iPad? Have you even paid attention to what this does that's so good?
Well, I'm excited about the utility. I haven't had an opportunity to test it, but I know video stuff on iPhone has always been excellent, and video apps have been few and far between, right? We've had a few very good ones, and then recently, Halide makers came out with Kino.
Oh, yes.
And that's cool. I'm glad that exists, but it's kind of sad for them, too, I guess. They actually explained how they're different from Final Cut. They said, Final Cut camera, if you get that and use it to work with your iPad, that is a filming suite for, controlling a multimedia production where you have multiple cameras. And that's an impressive feat on its own. But Kino is more of a simulated camera system with advanced filters. So they are able to give you, that ProRes file with basically full the raw ability to edit with different LUTs and different things, and it's just a different kind of workflow where you can get in and get very creative in how you're styling your video. So I believe both can exist side by side, but I haven't tried this functionality yet. It's something I think will come in handy though in the future if we want to get multi-angle views of just some event we're going to, or I'm excited. How do you intend to use it?
Well, I've only played with it to test now and seen that it does everything they say, but I have a very particular use case, which is I make a YouTube video for writers, a YouTube series for writers, and recently I switched to using a webcam for its Logitech MX Brio webcam. It was very good. It seemed to be great picture quality, but I could also mount it kind of permanently in my Elgato prompter, which meant I didn't have to, surrender my phone to it when I wanted to show something on the phone in the channel. But recently there's something wrong with the settings. It's being a little bit fuzzy. I've tried cleaning the lens. I now am convinced that I need to switch to the phone with its back cameras and a much better resolution. But of course, if I do that, where I position it in a prompter, I can't see what's being filmed. But here, I could just put the iPad next to it, and then like a live feed. Except, as it happens, I have a problem with the mount, just getting the position of everything. I'm going to have to adjust, possibly with a screwdriver. So that's taking a bit of time. But it's going to become my new YouTube setup.
Yeah, I can imagine YouTubers, especially if they have multiple Apple devices, being able to just have multicam set up so they have a forward shot, maybe an over desk shot of their hands, whatever they're doing, and being able to see that simultaneously on an iPad nearby. Like that's a really good setup, and I think and that way you have them perfectly synced. You can stitch them together however you want in a final export. It's all done in app. Like I said, I think this will be a lot of fun to play with, but we have so much to talk about today. Apple Intelligence was our main topic. We're going to get to that, but let's get through a few news items first. Nothing too big going on, I don't think. Apple seems to have forgotten the EU exists. So much so that they're not bringing some features over there, right?
Yeah, that's a small embarrassment for me because, of course, I'm in England. We've had Brexit, and I swear for 8 years I've been trying to find any benefit to Brexit at all. And this is the first one. Yeah. So, forget the poverty, forget musicians not being able to travel, forget all the work actually that I had that just died and is never coming back. We've got Apple Intelligence coming. So that's good then, isn't it? Yes.
iPhone mirroring is here, you'll be able to use that.
Although, actually, as you said that, I've got to tell you this, I had a sudden thought. Could I possibly, for that iPhone mirroring, could I use it in my camera setup? Could I watch the camera through iPhone mirroring on my Mac and save all of the setup stuff? Just there's the Mac, use it. And the answer is no. You can't use the camera for it. I've just found that out.
Right. You can't have multiple continuity streams.
No.
So, what do you think? What is Apple's reasoning here? A lot of people seem to believe that this is Apple playing hardball. Basically, they're trying to prove to the EU how important Apple is and what they have, what they're able to do by withholding Apple Intelligence. Users are going to be very upset. They're going to be talking to their governments about how can we fix this. Apple's saying they're doing this because they could get in trouble because they don't want to violate the DMA with new features. And they're going to have to review these one by one and make sure that everything is fine. So it could be a long delay. This is the kind of thing that could last a year or more, especially when with governments involved. So Apple's basically holding these features hostage in order to get the EU to back off with some of these DMA compliance issues, because we also know at the same time they're investigating Apple for DMA violations. So it seems a little unfair to the users in the EU that Apple's doing this, but at the same time, like I can honestly say I don't have an opinion because it doesn't affect me. The internet is full of opinions. Go out there and read them. I'm not going to, be silly about trying to make the assumption that I know anything about EU politics in a way that I'm going to have a solid opinion here. I'm just going to say Apple has a right to do what they want with their technologies, and the EU is a government that, needs to make decisions. I think they need to make more clear decisions. I'm not a big fan of this idea that you need to follow the spirit of the law. The law is the law. Write it down the way you mean it. That we have a saying, say what you mean what you say. And I feel like there's a little bit of crosstalk and confusion here. So hopefully they get all of this sorted out, and Apple, doesn't need to play too hard. But I've seen some people very upset about this situation in a way that I'm just kind of surprised, because for me, it's a company. I mean, I have vested interest in their success, sure, but I don't have personal feelings for what Apple does, because at the end of the day, they're still a company trying to, increase their bottom line and make shareholders happy.
What, you think Apple doesn't care about you and me?
I also sometimes have our pictures on their wall.
Okay, sometimes when I'm driving and I've asked Siri to play something I like, and I kind of like the song, but I don't want it now. I am hesitant to skip it because I picture Tim Cook in Apple Park going, oh, he doesn't like that one as much anymore. Let's not play that one. Okay, I figure that's his evening's work, what with time zones and things. I think you're right that it's politics most likely, but I wonder if iPhone mirroring is one of them. Since we're talking about that a lot, let's do that one. Is there a chance that the DMA, the Digital Markets Act, would possibly require Apple to have Android mirroring as well, if they have one?
I think that might... I'm not sure if that's the problem, or if it's Apple using its vertical integration so well that it's edging out the competition on screen mirroring. And what would happen is the DMA would say, well, Apple, you have to open up your system so that other screen mirroring applications have the ability to touch the screen like you can in your version of screen mirroring. And if you don't turn that on, that'll be a violation. And I think that's what Apple is most afraid of here. Because that would require a lot of system things. Like the original DMA situation that we're dealing with that Apple had to update iOS for required a lot of changes to how the underlying frameworks work in iOS to allow third parties to do what they're doing now. This would be that all over again, right? Just giving the reason why screen mirroring works so well, just for that example, is because of the vertical integration of software and hardware. Apple has access to everything. Giving everyone else access to everything sets a dangerous precedent, I think, in just general technology. Does that mean that we should never get an API? No. Apple, we've seen this happen before. They introduce a new private API feature like screen mirroring, and then they spend years working the system up to a public API that would allow them to do similar, if not exactly the same thing. It just takes time to ensure that privacy is maintained, but the DMA would require them to do it immediately or else face fines.
It's interesting, isn't it? You forget sometimes that even a company as big as Apple has a limit on how much it can do and how fast things can be done. But there are those limits.
They try to avoid breaking things.
Yeah,
they don't want to break it. It's a delicate balance.
Billion users at a time. It must be. You said last week about how they've mucked around with photos, and that's a gigantic thing for practically every user. But yeah, so they're doing it. It's just carefully.
I can see why the AI features are also on the table here. Again, I understand both sides of this argument, right? Like, I'm not taking a direct position as far as that goes, because again, I don't have a dog in this race. I live in the United States, but the other side of this position is like Apple's withdrawing this on purpose to fight the EU and force their hand. But there is some merits to the argument that they need to withdraw it, right? So I've heard the argument of Apple Intelligence. Well, if Apple is opening its devices to these advanced, AI systems, who's to say the EU isn't going to mandate that they allow ChatGPT the same system-wide access? The thing Elon Musk feared, right? The one he said he was threatening to ban all iPhones if Apple allowed ChatGPT deep integration into iOS. Well, that's not a thing, but technically speaking, the DMA could mandate that, and then Apple would either have to pull out of the EU or allow Google Gemini and ChatGPT system-wide access to everyone's data, and that's, again, just it's not built for that. And so I could see why Apple would want to hold that back and go into deep negotiations with the EU to say, hey, if we bring these features to the EU, are you going to force us to do something, or are we good? And I think that's where we are now, but those types of negotiations take a long time. So we'll see what happens. I would love to hear everyone's opinions, especially if you're in the EU. Let me know where you stand on this stuff. Of course, William doesn't count. He decided to leave. So we'll see. Yeah, it was your decision, William. We'll see what happens. I am hopeful that Apple, again, Apple's a company. They have lawyers. They don't always make decisions in perfect altruism, right? They gotta do things company stuff, right, sometimes, and that can get a little dirty and that can get a little mean. So don't invest so many of your personal feelings is all I gotta say.
Right, you're gonna have to find something else to say, because I've got my head back in my hands over the whole Brexit thing again.
I'm sorry, William.
I need tea, at least. This episode is brought to you by Notion. Notion is one app and one service that combines all of your notes, documents and projects into a single space that is simple and beautifully designed. For all the special features, for all the really smartly integrated AI as well, it is this single space idea that is what appeals to me about Notion. I do like that my Mac and iPad have just countless apps on them, and I do like jumping into different tools and trying out different things, but when you need to focus, things are different. The time you spend thinking, which app shall I use, what tool within it, have I updated this thing, is there a utility I can find, that's actually exactly the same as how you and I can spend a quite appalling amount of time churning over the tasks in our head. Which tasks should we be doing now? Which ones can we do now? When you've got to get things done, you've got to focus. And because Notion can be this one single place you go to for everything, you are spending your time and your energy on achieving the results you need to. Actually, that's quite a fair summary of the AI features in Notion too. Because, I mean, I think you've noticed there are now countless AI tools in this world, but Notion AI is right there with you inside your work. There's no switching to a different tool. You just stay focused. Keep doing your work, but tell Notion AI to search through your old projects and what you need. It will be right there. Or use Notion's automation tools. I love these too, so that it can do the organizing chores that you used to have to spend time on, and instead you can concentrate on your work. Notion is fun to use, let's not forget that, but part of the fun is the satisfaction that you're getting on with what you need and what you want to do. Try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/AppleInsider. This is important. Why Apple Insider there? All of this is all lowercase letters. So notion.com/AppleInsider and try the powerful, easy to use Notion AI today. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. Notion.com/AppleInsider. And thank you to Notion for its support of the Apple Insider podcast. You mentioned before all this about fines, and I lose track of quite how the proportions are, but it is conceivable that Apple would be fined $1 billion a day by the EU. Even Apple surely would struggle with $1 billion a day.
It wouldn't be good.
No,
they would just leave. They would just stop operating in the EU.
There was talk a few months ago, maybe sometime last year, that Apple and WhatsApp would drop messages in the UK because of what the governments were doing here. But basically, the government here doesn't do anything, so that worked out all right. In the end, maybe that's going to be the same with the EU. I mean, I have problems with some of the EU's logic in some of this, but I actually quite admire them for being the first in the world to get this kind of thing done at all. You look at all these other countries that are trying, and EU's just done it. And the EU is a union of 27 member states, and it got them all on side for this. And then every country implements slightly separate, slightly differently, but they're all in agreement for it. And I think that's an impressive move, even if along the way some of it isn't great. But let's get away from politics. You said about news. I do want to talk, you're right, I want to talk more about Apple Intelligence, this tantalizing Apple Intelligence coming our way. But is there more news that's particularly exciting you? Because I actually have one I want to ask you about. But let's tantalize you.
Looking at our show notes, we've already covered a bunch of this, so scrolling. We have two things I want to touch on. I have in my notes. Three things maybe, actually, that because something just came to mind. RCS launched, just a brief mention. Technically, if you have Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile in the United States and you're running Beta 2, you can turn on RCS, and it works. There's still some bugs. Android people can send you HDR video and high-resolution photos, and if they react using a tapback, you'll see it on your phone, but you doing it that direction is still kind of broken. They'll still get the doubled messages where, Wesley reacted with a thumbs up. That's still in the works, but the communication is there. It shows up as sent as RCS in the Messages app, so that's interesting. I can't use it because I use MVNO, virtual operator network, whatever, called Visible, that uses the Verizon network, which is so much cheaper than Verizon. I don't need all their garbage, so I'm so happy that I made that move. But I don't have RCS just yet in the beta, but it will come to everyone very soon.
I haven't even looked to see if it's in mine because I'm not in the US. This whole green bubble, blue bubble, I mean, that's still there, but the whole interoperability, couldn't care less outside the US.
I've seen some people on social media, like big accounts, people sharing into my timeline, saying, I don't need WhatsApp anymore with RCS. And even British people are saying that. So I'm interested in seeing what kind of shift occurs here. I don't think it's going to destroy those markets in overseas because they're already so ingrained. But it could mean younger folks, especially overseas, shifting over to iMessage and Messages app with RCS support. So this could be a big deal and maybe a good thing for Apple, weirdly enough. Who knew?
That's a really good point. I mean, I was going to say I dramatically prefer iMessages to WhatsApp, but that's a bit over the top. It's just WhatsApp I find it really ugly. and messages.
And it's a separate app, and it's a separate system, and you don't know what they're doing with your data if they do get any of it. I know they have encryption, but they're weird, and there's been hacks and blah, blah, blah. I do think that they should have different colors for RCS, maybe a nice purple, but I don't know.
Okay. But you're big into colours this week. You like the change of the notification badge. You want... Okay. All right. Well, you're the artist out of the two of
they're
us.
Useful. Imagine if you pulled up to a street light and they were just suddenly different colors. Would that not matter to you?
I'm a terrible driver. It wouldn't. No. Okay.
Fair enough. So a stop sign is just suddenly green and you just don't know what to do. So AAA gaming.
That's the one I want to ask you about because I don't understand this. Explain this, please. What's the story?
Okay, so AAA game. So industry terms. If you've never heard the term AAA game, it's probably because you don't care about video games, and that's fine. So it's just like baseball. And if maybe you don't watch baseball, so let's break it down even further. There's levels of importance, right? If you have just an A tier game, fine, it's a game. AA is mid tier. They're going to make some money, and AAA is your big stuff, right? Your Call of Duty and God of War, these huge multi-million-dollar projects that get sold millions at a time to people with consoles and PCs, huge games, right? We saw Death Stranding and Resident Evil and Assassin's Creed make their way to iPad. Those are AAA games. They didn't make any money, it seems, not very much. Out of the 100,000 some installs, we're seeing about 3,000 apparently purchased the app. This is based on aggregated data from a third party collecting. This isn't like Ubisoft's report, so who knows? Or not like Capcom or whoever's report. We have no idea, but this, honestly, to me, these numbers ring true. And I want to explain why. So the angle a lot of people took, I think including AppleInsider, and that's fine because we're not a video game beat, so I forgive them. But their angle was basically nobody cares about gaming on iPad and they're not willing to spend $50 on the games. I don't think that's quite what it is. We don't know yet. That could be the answer. That could be it. I think it's too early to tell. The problem is everything released on iPad and iPhone so far is a very small market. You need the older M chips run these games, but they don't run it as well, right? You need in order to run them good, you need the A17 Pro on an iPhone 15 or an M4 and an iPad Pro. Both are relatively new. You need to care about gaming, so you need to go out of your way to download these games and then make the purchase with hard-earned money. So we're slowly shrinking the market size already, but the biggest problem of all is these games have been on the market for months, if not years. So everyone who already owns PCs, who consider themselves gamers, who care about these video games at all, they've already played them. If Death Stranding came out, in 2021 or whatever, and you wanted to play it, you played it in 2021. You didn't wait until now to play Resident Evil 4, which, by the way, came out in the GameCube 20 years ago. So the games that are coming, and Resident Evil 7 is still coming out on the iPad, and that one's even older than the more recent Resident Evils that came out on iPad. So I think it's a good experiment to say this works. These games run on iPad. They're running on these chipsets. They're doing ray tracing and everything like that. It's a good proof of concept. I'm not sure how much money they expected to make. Maybe more, sure. But the true test for AAA gaming on iPhone and iPad and perhaps even Mac is coming this fall, with AAA games launching day and date on iPad.
Oh, I see. Right.
That is the true test. Will people buy Assassin's Creed Shadows for $50 or $60 on their iPad Pro and play it because it comes out day and date with the PlayStation? Or are gamers already so inset on their Windows PCs, their PlayStations, that they don't even think of their iPad that way, and we're going to have to spend years changing their mind? And in order to do that, that would require these game companies making heavy commitments with a lot of money with very little money in return. So what do you think, William? Is it all a lost cause, or should we all just be a little more patient?
For some reason, I work with a woman who loathes Apple to the point of practically a frenzy. And the more I dug into it, it was just that she's a gamer. I was like, okay, Mac stuff, Apple stuff, rubbish for games. Fine. It doesn't concern me because I'm not interested in it. So I paid no attention to this. I was surprised that big games failed, but now it makes sense with you. It's just if I were a gamer and I had a games console, that's what I would think of first, I think, when a new title came out.
I like the capability. Me as a gamer, I've had, and it's my generation specifically, I think, older folks maybe don't think this, and younger folks missed the boat, and they've always had iPads in their hands, so it's a different way of thinking. But for whatever reason, my generation had this dream, and the dream was having AAA games in your pocket, and the PlayStation Portable and the PS Vita tried to do this, and they failed because the consoles that they made that could run higher end games were too expensive and required hardware that broke. That just it was too far ahead of its time. The concept was good, but the technology was poorly executed and just didn't work out. The PSP Go, I will still argue, is probably one of the best handheld consoles of all time. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. It's adorable. But I will say that we've now finally achieved that dream. We can now run full-size console games. I remember back in the day holding a Game Boy Color in my hand and thinking, wouldn't it be so cool if I could play Pokemon Stadium from the Nintendo 64 on my Game Boy? Of course, it couldn't do that. Just completely different systems. This little, 1632-bit Game Boy couldn't run a 64-bit 3D video game, right? Just impossible to even think of. But today, you can do it all on an iPad, and it's unheard of. When they came out with Grand Theft Auto and everything, the older ones on iPad, those PS2 level games, it was impressive. It's like, wow, we're finally seeing console games on these mobile devices. And now today, we're sitting here talking about games that run on PlayStation 5 releasing on the iPad at the same time. We've finally done it, and now nobody cares. So maybe it just took too much time. People game differently. If you're going to play a AAA game like that, maybe you want to play it on a big screen, and maybe the iPad just isn't that for you. So I'm not sure what market we're targeting, except for the people like me who grew up thinking, wouldn't this be so cool? But now everything else does the thing we want it to do. Is there any point in making the iPad into an incredible portable gaming console? I think there is, because I still hold on to that dream of maybe I'll still own a PlayStation. I mean, my argument has always been, if you're an Apple person, just go buy a PlayStation. You'll get everything you want from that. But I think that we shouldn't let go of this idea that these are amazing computers capable of playing good video games, and perhaps Apple needs to do more. I think we need to make the iPad into a little console. Let me plug the iPad into the TV and have a 16:9 external output from the video game, as if it was a little PlayStation running it. I understand these are all very technical problems. They're very difficult to solve, but the Nintendo Switch is in third place for a reason, because there's only 3 consoles, but it has enough power to run these amazing games, Mario and Zelda, and run them on the handheld and run them on the television. It's this perfect combination. Just do that with the iPad. They don't need to be perfect, beautiful representations that the PlayStation 5 can achieve, because it has so much graphical power. It just needs to be enough. Zelda Breath of the Wild could run 10 times over on an iPad, right? Like, because Nintendo Switch has the power of an iPhone 5S or something. It's not that powerful of a machine. It's just the games are technically beautiful with the stuff that they have. Nintendo's always been good at that. So, long story short, I don't think we should give up on gaming on iPad and stuff yet. There are good games on iPad outside of these AAA games, and I would put them in the AA category. And maybe that's just where iPad needs to live. They just need to make better mobile games.
Okay, how about long story medium? When people play games on an iPad, do they use like a separate handheld controller?
You have to. It's impossible. Right. They give you the touchscreen controls. It's impossible. If you've iPhone or iPad, you cannot play Resident Evil 4 with a touchscreen. I'm sure there are people out there who can. Maybe the touch first generation, the kids younger than me, probably growing up on a touchscreen, be like, oh, it's fine. I physically cannot do it. Even if it's Pokemon game from 30 years ago, and that you only need a directional pad and an A and B button. Even that is just like, no, I want a physical controller. It's just not, it doesn't feel right touching a screen to hit a button.
So I wonder if it's like the ergonomics of this are a problem, because I have the controller in my hand. Do I have the iPad just on my lap underneath it? Do I mount it up somewhere? It feels like if the console's plugged into the TV, then I just pick it up and carry on. Whereas this, I've got a position thing. It feels, a lot of steps, a lot of decisions to make over it. And every one of these things is a barrier to use, I suppose.
I think this gets to our previous conversations about, because I know I keep bringing up the iPad. The iPhone can run these games too, to an extent. I think the iPhone is a different story. If you're a gamer and you're going to play AAA games on iPhone, go buy a Backbone or one of these, grip controllers that puts your.
Oh, sorry, I honestly thought that was an insult. Like, get yourself a Backbone there, great. But it's right. The iPhone slots into this device thing, doesn't it?
It looks like a little Nintendo Switch after you put it in there, and that's cute. That's how you should be playing games on your iPhone. Now on the iPad, it's a little more complicated, but this gets back to our discussion of iPad. If you want the iPad to achieve the Naked Robotic Core dream of being multi-module, put it in one thing, it's a different thing. Well, you have to have the things to put it in. So this is one of those situations where, okay, I'm going to game on my iPad. Well, I have a little magnetic stand to stick it into. Now it's a little floating TV, and I just pick up a game controller and play on it, right? So it requires you to have the hardware, but it's possible. Or you can just play it with the iPad and the Magic Keyboard on a table. That's fine too. It's just, we need to see more commitment, and we need Apple really, just going way back to my Vision Pro second review, Apple needs to be a better evangelist. Get out there. Hire the big streamers. Pay them. Paid sponsorships are fine. People don't care. Get people to play your games on Twitch streams. Tell them how great it is to game on an iPad. Have commercials about gaming, right? Really push it out there as a fourth console. Because right now, what's so funny about this whole conversation, William, I have to always remind people of this because I think they forget. Apple is the highest grossing game company on the planet. and it's annoying because it's because of Angry Birds and Sudoku, not because of Resident Evil 4. But Apple has a lot of whales, right? They have so many iPhones in the market that it's guaranteed that out of the population of the billion iPhone users, that at least 10% of them are willing to spend hundreds of dollars on games. So they're grossing more money than the rest of the game industry, just simply because they have phones on the market. They're an excellent contender in the gaming sphere. Mobile games are a thing, more so than they ever were before. But what we're discussing today isn't these tiny mobile games, the quote-unquote mobile games, but what I'm talking about is console-level games on iPhone, and Apple really, I think, needs to evangelize that in a way they haven't before to see success.
Yeah, you're talking about the price of these things, like $50 or whatever. If I take it that $50 buys me the game on an iPad, if I also have a console, it's another $50 for that. Mm-hmm. That seems like a barrier. If I have to, $50 sounds like a lot. It's not a casual purchase, but for the number of hours you get and things, I understand. It's just 50 times 2 is a problem.
As a gamer, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't buy both versions. You're going to make a choice, and if you have a game console, you're going to choose the game console every time. Because you're going to get a better experience on the console. This is, again, Apple is targeting such a specific niche. Who are we talking to when we talk about AAA gaming on iPad?
Well, you.
It's a person. It's a person with an iPad who wants to game on the iPad, who has maybe. So for me, I think what would be the most interesting, and this is something else Apple should work on, maybe with Microsoft. I have a PlayStation. There are games I can't play on PlayStation because they're exclusive to PC, Steam, or Microsoft Xbox, right? So Apple should maybe be looking at bringing some of these exclusives to the iPad so it can give console gamers options. What if I could play Starfield on my iPad because I can't play it on my PlayStation? That is a compelling argument. You don't need a PlayStation and an Xbox to play these games. You can have a PlayStation and an iPad, and now you have access to Steam games, right? Work with developers on Steam. Steam is it has a huge game library. They're adding hundreds a day, right? And a lot of it's garbage, right, just by sheer volume. But there's a lot of compelling content there that would work great on an iPad with a controller. Talk to these developers. Give them money. Do whatever you have to do, but I don't know. We're getting there. I know we're always talking about Apple's finally getting into gaming or whatever. We've been saying that since the Pippin, but I think it's more true than ever that Apple is getting serious about gaming. Someone in that executive team cares about gaming, and I just want them to have a bigger voice and give them the power that they need to make this work, because if they flounder this now, there's no recovering, I don't think. Like, we now have the power, we have the push, we have the GameKit development engines, all of this stuff is in place. Now make it happen, or else no one's ever going to bother because we won't believe you. They'll come out and say, oh, we're serious about gaming this time. No, you're not. It's the boy who cried wolf. We need them to actually commit this time.
Sorry, you hear me thinking aloud here. Let me try to focus on this. I was thinking about barriers to stuff, and you mentioned a thing called Starfield, which, sorry, I've never heard of before, but it put back in my head the game called Elite. It's written on the BBC Micro in the 1980s. I liked it then. It's very famous for what it did. And 4 years ago, some number of years ago, it came out again, and it was on Steam. So I got a Steam account. I wrote a review of this game, and I found it just abysmal. The number of steps to get through Steam to get to this one game. I got to the stage where I've got 5 minutes. Forget that. It took several minutes to get through this ridiculous account thing to do it. And people insisted to me that when you've got hundreds of games, it's a great way of doing it. But I don't see how that shortens the steps to get to any one of them. Yeah. And I came away thinking that Steam was really well made, because of all the stuff that Steam rises from was crossing my mind at that time. I had the impression then, from all the people telling me I was wrong, that gamers are kind of a bit more technical stuff. They're more used to stuff that would irritate me. So there are types of barriers that are okay for you and barriers that aren't. Right. And how do you cross over? I'm fascinated by this, but I'm never going to play any of these games. So
no, that's fair. I mean, so one last topic, and we'll get Apple Intelligence. If you're wondering why we're not spending the whole episode on it, it's because there's not much to talk about. We can't use it yet, but we're going to dive into what it is and what it does at the very least. But before we get there, I wanted to mention one last thing, and I think you had something, William. But one last bit: the Beats pill has returned. Are you going to buy one, William?
I'd never even heard of it. I mean, I remember looking. I looked up to see why. There's something called. It's not pill pushers, is it? It's pill people. Pill people. Yeah. Right. And okay, well, is that just an American thing? That went totally by me.
Okay. Well, so Beats, I believe, has always been global, but they were very popular in the United States, and exploded in popularity with the headphones. But there was this little Beats pill, and then there was the Beats pill XL, which caught on fire and they had to recall. And then we have the Beats Pill Plus, which was made by Apple after they acquired Beats. So that was the pretty much only Apple-made Beats pill that we ever had. It had a lightning port to charge it. I have one sitting here next to my desk. Still works, just not for very long. The battery's ancient. We're talking more than a decade ago. But Beats pills are these little portable Bluetooth speakers. The new one is waterproof. It has a lanyard. It's cool. I'm going to get 2 of these. I'm going to get one for me and one for my girlfriend, and then we can have a stereo pair when we travel. It'll be fun. But of course, it's Bluetooth, no AirPlay. People are upset about that. I don't care. AirPlay's an expensive battery utility. I don't want to drain my battery just because I want fancy AirPlay. Bluetooth's fine. So the Beats pill was very popular back when Beats was really getting it was back when the Beats logo still was this nasty red splotch with the word Beats in it instead of the nice B we have now, which is so much nicer. But they've come out with so many iterations, and then the Apple came out with the Beats Pill Plus after buying Beats, and that thing I believe was like $250 if not $300 at release, which is comical for a Bluetooth speaker. And I have to laugh at that when people made fun of the HomePod for its price. So And it was just so much less utility than the HomePod, and it would still cost that much. The new one, thankfully, is $150. That feels right. I would honestly say it's probably closer to a $99 product, but this is Apple we're talking about. But the new one, it's waterproof, or water resistant, I'm sorry. So splash proof. You can take it to the beach. You don't have to worry. Just don't dunk it underwater. I mean, you're not going to listen to music underwater anyway, are you? Anyway,
whale song, anything could be okay.
Play it for the fish. If you have an aquarium, just toss it in there. I think it's a nice device. I'm glad it's back. I'm buying two. Me and my girlfriend will be able to put it in a stereo pair when we travel and stuff. That'll be fun. But I think it was just a very different time in Apple, pre-Apple marketing. There were these things called pill dudes, or the pill character.
Right.
And so today we have a more politically correct name called the pill people, which, great. I hope they come back. There's a commercial with them in it that's very brief. The original pill people were voiced by like Chris Rock and stuff. It was really silly commercials with them in it.
Okay.
Yeah, like they were people, like, go look up these ads. They're absurd. But it's a stand you put your Beats pill in, and I am 100% going to buy one the minute they become available because they're so dumb looking. I have to have one for my desk.
Do they look like people or something?
Imagine the pill, right? You're is its head with a set of eyes on top, but it's more like its mouth. So it's a gaping wide hole with with eyes on top. And then a stick figure that you can position its arms underneath. So it's a stand that you put the pill in. It's very absurd, and I love it.
One thing I don't get from this is, well, a couple of things. How big or small, compared to, say, a HomePod Mini, how big is a Beats pill?
It's big and long, like a pill. But it's the same size class, so imagine two HomePod Minis side by side.
Right. So still portable enough that you'll have two and carry them around.
You can slip it into a water bottle holder in a backpack kind of size.
Oh, okay. Right.
A lot of people do that, and then they walk around festivals blaring their music.
Is it the portability that makes them better than, say, a HomePod Mini? Is that the big difference?
So I have a HomePod Mini with a battery stand right now. It's a little like $50, $60 battery stand that gives it like 12 hours of playback and makes it portable. But the HomePod requires Wi-Fi, so I have to trick it into joining my iPhone cellular network by having an iPad connect to my iPhone, and then have the iPad tell the HomePod to join the network. It's very convoluted, but it works. And then when you're out and about, you can use your cell signal to tell the HomePod to play music. Too many steps, and not enough. It's not a good portable speaker. The HomePod Mini is a great home speaker because you can have a dozen of them around your house, and they just sync together. HomePod Mini, it being AirPlay only, Wi-Fi only, it's just not a very good portable utility. It is possible to make it portable. I have used mine portable for a while now. It's smaller. It doesn't produce that much bass. It's got its own sound signature, which sounds good in a room, but it loses all of its, vibrato when it's outside. There's nowhere for the sound to bounce off of, so it becomes this hollow little shell in the middle of a field. It's not as good. HomePods do great when it has things to have reverb, right? So the Beats pill is designed to be portable. It's this big, long, like the pill shape is all speaker pretty much in the center with a couple of tweeters. And it's got this deep, heavy boom. So it's very strong bass, very loud volume, so it can fill a space. And then you can pair two of them together. They're just really well made for portability, not to mention that they have like a 24-hour battery life. So I think it's just a better portable speaker, and I'm excited to play around with this thing.
You said that I had one more thing, but I've actually forgotten it because something has happened, something bad. You remember that bug I said was fixed in my shortcut? Well, I tapped the button to say, we're talking about Beats Pill now. Got to find a picture of that, put it in, of course, chapter artwork. And I happened to look at the result, and I have a draft that says, you and I have now been talking for 3 minutes and 3 seconds. I feel this is erroneous somehow. So there's something else wrong with this shortcut. What it does is it grabs the current, the start time, right, and then works out what is the time now, and then so how many minutes in does the chapter artwork need to change, and that's obviously failed. somewhere. So I'm going to go grieve about that. Yes. But Apple Intelligence will fix it, surely. Somehow. I don't know how.
Let's do at least 10-ish minutes, because that's all it really needs. Apple Intelligence, and we've also, so just to recap, we've talked about iPad OS 18, Mac OS, and Sequoia, and iOS 18, and there's a lot of Apple Intelligence peppered through that. So, and I hope by now everyone's, probably been beaten to death with everything that's coming. But the broad overview of Apple Intelligence is we have local on-device models that can run without needing to connect to a server, and the ability to kick back to an Apple-controlled server with private cloud compute that basically acts as a doubled up, so twice as much bandwidth LLM that can execute on what is essentially an M-series chip with a secure enclave that is treated like it's part of your phone, even though it's in a server, with no privacy concerns. Just long story short. And the abilities you get right now, these are actually not all of the abilities. Some people seem confused that this is it. No, this is the beginning of Apple Intelligence. And all of these features are going to roll out slowly over time to select audiences. It's gonna be a while. This rollout of Apple Intelligence, we're going to be talking about it rolling out until the next year, the next WWDC. That's how long this initial setup is going to take, and they're going to continue improving on it, continue adding to it. But the initial features we've mentioned before are writing tools, which are system-wide. Anywhere that there is a text input block, even in third-party apps, as long as it's using Apple's text engine, will have access to writing tools, which gives you grammar corrections or can rephrase what you're typing into be more professional or whatever. Then you have Image Playground, where you can generate images or emojis. That appears as a iMessage app as well inside of the iMessage place, but there's also a separate app that lets you generate images and such. Just no realistic images, and none with nudity or violence or anything like that. And then we have the third prong of Apple Intelligence, and that, let's see, I'm sorry, Image Playground, text tools.
Well, actually, now you're saying it, I think there was a thing I'm looking forward to in Safari, which will do a reader mode, will give you a contents list, give you a quick summary of the article you're reading, all that stuff. So if you're searching for something, it's a fast way to see, is this likely to be what I need? And I thought that was coming in. But I believed that was coming in beta 2, but I've gone to so many sites to try it that it isn't there. I mean, Reader has been improved and things have changed there, but I get no contents page. I certainly get no article summary. And I was actually a little disappointed. And then you made me think, well, actually, perhaps I was wrong there. It's coming with Apple Intelligence, which would fit, wouldn't it? The summarizing to make an article.
Kind of. So it's weird. This is where it gets a little confusing. The highlights feature in Safari is part of Safari, not Apple Intelligence. It just, in order for it to show up as a summary, and it's I think it'll be powered, like there's going to be a backend with Apple Intelligence that'll be able to scan the page and give you a faster, better summary with table of contents. I think that's part of it. But everyone else that isn't using Apple Intelligence, or if you choose to turn it off, will still get summaries and highlights in Safari, because I have them in beta 2. You can go to a hotel website, and it will give you the hotel's address in Apple Maps in the highlight.
I tried that using the same Arriva hotel that Apple showed in its keynote, and I chose the same location they had, and nothing happened. But it works for you.
Maybe it's not in the UK yet, but I was able to do that with the hotel we stayed at recently, and it worked fine. I've been able to summarize articles from AppleInsider, from other websites, from IGN. So it'll just pop up with a summary, and then if you click into reader mode, a summary block appears. The only thing I haven't seen is table of contents show up. And I've tested it on long articles, and it still didn't show up, so I'm not sure what triggers that or if that's even available yet. But the highlights feature isn't strictly tied to Apple Intelligence. Some of these blur the lines. I think some of them are there and then get more abilities with Apple Intelligence. So that's the dividing line. Again, if you really want to know what is coming in iOS that isn't Apple Intelligence, look at the keynote before the Apple Intelligence is mentioned. And everything before that moment is coming to everybody.
Good point. Okay, yeah.
And
And Safari was before then. Yes, it was. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I'm just being left out. What do they think I'm in the EU? That'd be okay. I'd live with that. But right, yeah.
So
I think because now you've said it because you're in the States and I'm not. There was a note, like a footnote, saying available in US English. I just assumed that meant not in French or German or something. But maybe it is region coded, and I should try it by switching to a US region on my Mac to see what happens.
Maybe
It's more of a faff than that sounds, but I'm curious now. Okay, hold my tea. Oh,
I just remember the third leg of Apple Intelligence. So, because there's three, it's like I said before, word writing tools, image playground, and Siri. So Siri is kind of a weird thing because it's not actually Siri. It is getting a better voice and more context and all of that, so that is helped by Apple Intelligence. But what is actually powering most of what's new with Siri is called App Intents, and we've had App Intents for a while now. If you want to know what App Intents are, open any app and just ask Siri, "What can I do here?" And it will tell you based on the App Intents available on that page. That is actually a feature. You don't need Apple Intelligence to do that. So try that in a few places. You'll see the app intents get uncovered by Siri, basically. But Apple is giving it more access to those in iOS 18, and it's going to make it a better Siri for controlling your device, for doing things across the system. There's a long list: books, browsers, cameras, journal, mail, photos, presentation, spreadsheets. Like basically anywhere in the system, Siri will be able to have context based on app intents. So that's interesting, but also that'll be super powered by Apple's intelligence systems. So that's Apple's current three-pronged approach. And then we have fourth separate prong, outside the tent. There's a tent pole, and then outside the tent, there's one just pole by itself, and that's integration with third-party generative tools like ChatGPT. So what were you going to say, William?
You sent me off on one mentally about Siri because I tell you, it's got worse over the betas. Right now, it's extraordinarily common for me to ask something like, take me to somewhere using Apple Maps. And it will do it. It'll open Apple Maps. It'll show me the route. There's the go button. But it will also say, you don't appear to have an app called Maps. I can search the App Store over and over again with maps and music and all sorts of things. And I can't conceive of why it could be so bad, because it is actually recognizing the command and doing something. I'm finding that more irritating than the old one, which is you ask it something today and it does it. You ask it something an hour later, exactly the same thing, and it doesn't. So
that sounds like a beta issue, because the reason why that's not working is because of app intents. And Apple's connecting Siri from your query to the app and what it's going to do, like Apple Maps, is likely completely changed in the beta code. But Siri itself, server side, whatever, isn't changed yet. So you're asking old Siri to do things through a system pipeline that exists for the new Siri. So there's a disconnect there that probably won't be fixed until later in the beta cycle.
No, what you're saying is I should say please. That's what it is. Yeah. That's the difference. Actually, in all seriousness, not now, but in the last few years with Siri, I have found if I do say please or any word that slightly extends the sentence for a command, it will work. I mean, if I don't have it, if I have just a short version, it doesn't. So I have been on my knees begging Siri to work. I'm not ashamed of that. Difficult when you're driving, but, as I said, bad driver. Okay, so actually, of all the things you said, Siri is the thing I am intent on, I think.
Right. Like, because you said you're not really intending to use the writing tools, not even for grammar checks, I suppose.
No.
And you're not really interested in generating your own emoji as much as you love emoji. And so, yes, of the three, I think Siri is the biggest one for you because you actively use it, and maybe this will make it better for everyone.
Good point. I mean, there is also what you just said about ChatGPT, and this week ChatGPT for the Mac was released, or version 8, I want to say, came out.
You can replace Spotlight with it.
Right, I would never do that. Alfred is my Spotlight replacement. I did download Mac ChatGPT, but I just haven't done a single thing with it. I haven't even installed it. I should possibly have a look, but
I can't be bothered. I don't care. I mean, Apple's thing will be fine, but I just, when it's part of my system, it's one thing, but I'm not going to go out of my way to go find this stuff to make broken things that I don't need, so it's fine.
No, except I actually replaced Google with Perplexity.ai, and this week I learned that Perplexity.ai is allegedly doing some data scraping that it said it wouldn't do. So that's kind of a... Can you trust any any artificial intelligence? Maybe Apple's version. They're looking, like the white hat version at the moment.
They're definitely the better of the group so far. As far as privacy, security, and ethics, I suppose. Right, they're totally green. I was listening to Apple News today, and they were talking about how, with the introduction of AI, search engines like Google servers would require the power of a few hundred homes to run a server, and now with Gemini, it's asking for the power of a few 100,000 homes. You need your own private nuclear reactor to run Google Gemini on a server for Google Gemini, and that just shows how crazy the power requirements are for these things. And the United States was aiming to be emission neutral by 2035, and that's just not going to happen anymore because of. I mean, I don't think it was ever going to happen, but we're definitely not going to do it now with the introduction of these programs. But Apple, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of that. Everything they're doing with artificial intelligence is 100% green energy, renewable energy, off of the stuff that they've been doing. So, and no offset. This isn't one of those silly offset games where they're buying rainforests or something. They're actually building power plants to power these servers, just like they are their offices, because their office buildings are all 100% renewable energy. So that's interesting. I hope more companies follow Apple's lead on this, because energy is such an important issue of today. And I think AI, getting past even the plagiarism and all of that, that's probably one of the most detrimental parts of all of this stuff, is just how much power it uses. And we have a energy crisis in the United States right now because of it. And I wonder, it's all on device. It's your iPhone, right? So you don't need a server to run it, and even Apple Cloud Compute is safe. So
I tell you, I mean, obviously I knew the stories of AI needs more energy, but I'm shocked. I did not realize the degree of that. In fact, I'm going to say, on that bombshell, Wes, we're about to have AppleInsider Plus for people who pay subscribers, but where can people find you when they want to hunt you down and ask more questions about iPad games?
Well, I'm on Mastodon, and of course you can email me. I've got, again, more emails asking for tips on how to do certain things. I've had people just ask specific questions about the show, so I always enjoy those. Please feel free to reach out and email me. Mastodon's great. Reviews on Apple Podcasts, always love to see those, good or bad. And I will say, before William wraps this up, we didn't spend too long on Apple Intelligence today, but don't worry, there's always going to be more to talk about, because I expect we'll start actually being able to use the features very soon. But what we discussed today, honestly, is the long and short of it. There's 3 major systems and the ability to call out to ChatGPT, and that is the entire strategy. So we'll see how that evolves over time. We'll get into it more in future episodes, and I hope you guys have enjoyed our coverage of WWDC. But now, I think starting very soon, maybe even the next episode, we're going to be getting into public beta discussions and things around maybe what we're seeing in test flights from other apps taking advantage of these features. So I'm very excited for all of that.
Yeah.
But please, of course, reach out and let us know what you guys think of the show and Apple Insider Plus.
I am so looking forward to non-Apple developers, third-party developers, test flight stuff, yes, because we'll actually, after all this talking, and we'll get to see it and use it, and it'll be great, I think. You people can reach me, should they wish, on email, william@appleinsider.com. I'm always there. Love emails. So, yeah, remember that there is actually more Apple Insider you can have, because every Monday there is HomeKit Insider, which all the best episodes feature Wes as well. So that's something to look forward to every week. And of course, we'll be back. Well, we'll be back next Friday for the normal episodes. But if you are an Apple Insider Plus subscriber, well, thank you. Great to have you here. Hang on for just 1 second, and we'll be right back now. But otherwise, Wes, great to talk to you. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Thank you, too, for our sponsors, Notion. And we'll be back next week.